Good evening and welcome to Legal Talk, the talk show brought to you by O'Donnell, Weiss and Megay Law Offices. Your life, your business, your law firm. We're located at 41 High Street in Pottstown, where we've been since 1955, and we're located at 347 Bridge Street in Phoenixville, where we've been located since, I think it's 2006, folks. Your law firm for all your legal needs. My name is David Megay, and I've been an attorney at the office for, about almost 30 years now. And tonight I'm joined by a fairly new attorney in the office, Melissa Iacobucci. Melissa, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Dave.
Melissa, we're taping this show in July 2017. Melissa joined the firm about a month or so ago. And folks, what we're going to talk about tonight, Melissa and I, mostly Melissa, I'm going to chime in the best I can, is we're going to be talking about custody, but not just custody. In particular, we're going to talk about custody in the context of school choice, public school, private school. Melissa, I want to hear about the rights and responsibilities of the primary custodian to choose a school, what the other parent can do if the primary custodian chooses a school that perhaps the other parent's not happy about, etc. So folks, grab a piece of paper and a pencil and follow along. But remember, we're just going to talk about custody in the context of school choice. Melissa, what I'd like to talk about first is the different types of custody, and that'll get us through almost half time, intermission, if you will. And then on the second half of the show, I want to talk about the difference between private schools and public schools in the eyes of the court through your experience, and also talk about the rights of parents to choose the school of their choosing. There's a lot of chooses there, and the remedies of the other parent if they're not happy with who that first parent chooses. So that's how we're going to break it up, folks. First half of the show, half time, and then second half of the show. Melissa, first thing, let's talk about just generally, and you and I could talk for probably 3 shows about all the different custody issues. But you've heard me today, or this morning, or this evening, Melissa, use the term partial custody, primary custody. A client comes walking in your door and says, Attorney Iacobucci, I want custody of my child. What does that mean, if anything?
Sure, Dave. So I always tell my clients that there's 2 types of custody. There's physical custody and there's legal custody. And as I explained to the client, physical custody is where does the child live? Mm-hmm. Where does the child spend his nights? And legal custody, on the other hand, is the decision-making ability. So,
like the right to make important decisions in the child's life, educational decisions,
religious decisions, and medical decisions.
You just teased a show that you and I are going to do next
next
month, or maybe in a couple months. I just thought of this. How about that religious aspect of legal custody is an interesting topic. So file that in your head.
Sure.
So I interrupted you. Sorry.
That's okay.
So legal custody, religious decisions, medical decisions, and educational decisions.
Those are the main 3.
Okay.
All decisions, but those are how the courts typically break it down.
Okay.
So that's legal custody. Parents often, if not always, share legal custody. So both parents have to agree about medical, educational, and religious decisions.
Well, wait a minute. What if my ex-girlfriend and I have a child, and she's 10, and I see that, I'm just being theoretical for a second, and I see that child 1 day a year. Could I have shared legal custody of that child?
You sure can.
Even though I see the child 1 day out of 365 every year?
Yes.
Assuming that I'm not, I didn't have my legal custody rights taken away because I'm a bad guy, I'm a criminal, etc.
You're still a parent, Dave.
Maybe I live in Japan, and I come back to the Pottstown, Phoenixville area 1 day a week. Okay, so legal custody is almost always shared then.
Almost always.
And that's something that I think our viewers need to hear. That I remember back in the dinosaur days when I did a lot of what you do, and Melissa, folks, does pretty much nothing but family law issues, custody issues, divorce, property distribution, etc. But back in the dinosaur days when I did it, Melissa, people would say to me, I want custody, and we're beating that term up now, but I don't want my ex to have any say over medical decisions, educational decisions, religious decisions. That doesn't happen very often, does it? It's almost always shared.
It's almost always shared. You have to have a pretty strong reason for why you wouldn't have shared legal custody.
Okay, okay. So I think you started off this paragraph or this segment by saying there's two different types of custody. Legal was the first one.
And physical.
And physical. What's
physical
mean? Like,
where the children live.
Okay.
And there's a party can have primary physical custody, and that's where the child lives most of the time, or partial, where the child lives some of the time, or there could be shared, and they live with both parties equally.
Equally. And how do they define where the kid lives? Do they look at number of hours? Do they look at overnights? Do they look at...
That's a really good question. It's overnights.
Generally, it's overnight. Is that what the law is, or is that just the practical practice of the courts in adding overnights?
That's the law is overnights.
Overnights. I remember, again, back, sorry for talking about the old days, but back when I did this stuff, I remember clients, as well as the other side and the other attorney, were just so hyper-focused on hours. And it used to bother the heck out of me when a client would come to me and say, hey, look, I have the child 27 and a half hours a week, and she has the child 22 and a half hours a week. And they're counting hours. That always gave me a hinky kind of feeling. But hours don't matter. It's the overnights which is important.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you get the primary physical custodian then, the person who has the most overnights a week.
Yes.
Then the partial physical custodian. What rights does that primary physical custodian have that the other spouse doesn't, or other parent doesn't have? Does it give him or her, once you're that primary physical custodian, does it give him or her the right to choose the church or choose the school?
It doesn't.
Okay, that's something that I really want to emphasize, folks, that stop counting hours. Frankly, stop counting overnights. Start looking at what's in the child's best interest.
Yes.
Right.
That's always the backdrop for any custody decision, is what's in the children's best interest.
I think that's, not to get too preachy, but
sure.
I think that's really important, at least in my experience, which is, again, a dated experience. Yours is right current. Okay, but doesn't the primary physical custodian also have another right?
Well, the law, separate and apart from legal and physical custody, says that the child can go to school in the school district where the primary custodian lives.
Okay, and that gets us to the school choice issue. But let's hold that for a second. What I was getting at is no, that's okay. You're ahead of me. That's good. That person gets to claim child support.
Oh, that's
where I was going. Yeah, but that's for another show.
That's a lot of other shows.
Yeah, it is. So we got primary physical custodian. We have the partial custodian.
Partial physical custodian.
Okay, and then we have a shared legal custody. Or excuse me,
shared physical
custody.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked before the cameras started.
Supervised.
There you go. But that's another show as well.
That's another show. That's another show as well. And if you have supervised, it might be an instance where you might not have shared legal.
Okay, we'll talk about that in another show. All right, let's get us back to the school choice, and we have a couple minutes yet before halftime, 5 minutes. Did I hear you say, or maybe I heard it in my head,
sure,
that the primary physical custodian gets to choose the school?
No, it doesn't get to choose the school, but the school law says that the child can go to the school district in which he primarily resides.
Okay.
In other words, the school will let you go there.
Okay, if you're the primary physical custodian, as determined by who? I come walking in, remember that scenario where my ex and I have a child, what did I say, I think a 10-year-old daughter. During my time with the 10-year-old daughter, she's in the car, we drive to Phoenixville School District, walk in and say, hey, I'm Dave, it's my daughter, we're going to enroll her in. When you're 10, what grade would you be in? 5th grade, I guess, or 4th grade, whatever
right.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
Can I do that? What does school need from me to enroll my kid? Generally, what have you seen?
Are you divorced at this point?
No,
Are
we've
you
never been
separated?
married. Never
Are you
been married.
You're separated?
Yep, never been married.
Is there a custody order?
Well, that's my point. Yeah, I have nothing other than it's me, this is my daughter, here's a birth certificate. I need either a custody order or an agreed order, right? Either an order from the court or an agreement of the parties?
Or a stipulation, yes.
Or a stipulation, okay. Now, I got a little confused there, Melissa. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We were just talking about the parties reaching an agreement, like through a stipulated court order, or the court telling us who has primary physical and who has partial physical, I think was the other term. How about this scenario? How about my ex and I separate? We have a 10-year-old daughter. We've always lived in Phoenixville together. The 10-year-old daughter was raised or born in Phoenixville, went through Phoenixville elementary schools. We separate, and my ex moves across the river, almost a stone's throw away from Phoenixville into Montclair, which is Springford School District. What if my ex and I agree, you know what? The primary physical custodian is my ex. You're living in Montclair, which is Springford School District, but we both agree that the child can continue. We both agree that it's in our child's best interest that the child continue Phoenixville School District. Can we do that? And how do we do that?
You can do that, but
Okay.
you need to get an order from the court.
A court order, okay. All right, so so we need a court order, and if whether that be a Chester County Court of Common Pleas or Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas, we need a court order, and that's because Phoenixville School District needs to know that the court has agreed that even though Dave and whoever are separated, their 10-year-old daughter continues to go to Phoenixville School District.
Correct.
Okay, so even though my ex and I no longer get along well enough to reside together, if we can put our heads together and agree on what we believe to be the child's best interest, we can change that school district, as long as there's a court order?
I believe so.
Okay, all right, good. That's good for the viewers to know that they have that flexibility and option, and I think it's even better for the viewers to know, Melissa, I keep rubbing my nose, does that mean we're getting into a fight later, or I'm getting into a fight? But hopefully what the viewers remember is you got to work together, or you should work together for the child's best interest. And the court encourages you to do that.
They do, but school's a touchy subject.
It is.
And oftentimes, well, no, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but sometimes parents cannot agree about the school choice.
Right, and it's even a touchier subject when if the child's 5, child doesn't really have much of a preference. He or she may say they do, but they're 5.
And
when they're 10, when they're 15, whole different deal.
Yes, and just to follow up with that point, the courts may not even consider your child's preference until she or he is at least 7 years old.
7.
That's usually the cutoff.
Okay,
yes.
and it also depends on the child's reason.
Sure.
The child says, I want to go to Phoenixville because I like the color of my classroom. That's not going to be enough.
Maturity is certainly important.
Right. Okay. Well, we're up against it, Melissa. Thank you. Folks, you've been watching Legal Talk, brought to you by the law offices of O'Donnell, Weiss, and Megay in Phoenixville and in Pottstown. Tonight we're talking about custody and in particular school choice issues. In the second half of the show, Melissa, I want to talk about public school, versus private school choice. And then towards the end of that second half, we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty logistics of my ex and I can't agree on time of day, let alone where the kid goes to school. What are her rights and responsibilities? What are my rights and responsibilities or remedies? So, folks, please stay tuned for the second half of the show. Thank you.
For over 50 years now, O'Donnell, Weiss, and Megay have helped their clients resolve a wide variety of legal challenges. OWM Law provides legal representation to clients throughout southeastern Pennsylvania. The attorneys and highly trained support staff utilize the latest technology and resources available to satisfy the needs of their clients. O'Donnell, Weiss, and Megay, delivering the highest level of professional service.
Welcome back to Legal Talk. the talk show brought to you by the law offices of O'Donnell, Weiss, and Megay. We're at 41 High Street in Pottstown, where we've been for 62 years, since 1955. We're at 347 Bridge Street in Phoenixville. We're at www.owmlaw.com, 610-323-2800, 610-917-9347. My name's David Megay, and tonight I'm joined by Melissa Iacobucci. And folks, if you're just tuning in, shame on you, you missed a good first half. But if you're just tuning in, we're talking tonight about custody, and not just generally custody. We're talking about custody and school choice and how it impacts on a parent's right to place their kid, their child, in a school of their choice, either with, Melissa, we talked towards the end of that first half, with the approval of the other spouse, or excuse me, other parent, right, and also without the consent of the other parent. Melissa, we ended the first half talking about one parent choosing a school over another parent, but what I want to talk about now for the first half of this half is the difference between public schools and private schools. Not esoterically the difference, but in the context of custody litigation. And then the second half of this half, we'll talk about procedures and logistics and what folks out there should be thinking about if any of their issues fall into what you and I are talking about tonight, that they should get to their attorney ASAP, because there's some timing issues we need to talk about. Let's get to the public school versus private school. Same scenario that I posed in the first half. My ex and I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she's the primary physical custodian. She lives in Montclair, Springford School District. I live in Phoenixville, where the kid always went to school, child always went to school. We're battling for primary physical, and either I or my family have the resources to send that child to a private school. That automatically gives me the leg up over my ex, right?
It doesn't.
Okay. How does it work? Like, how does the law and how does the courts look at private schools versus public schools?
Well, I always tell my clients that private does not necessarily mean better,
Okay.
because what the courts are looking at are the best interests of the child. And a private school might be in one child's best interest, but that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be in another child's best interest.
Okay.
And how I like to say that is, I went to a private high school, but my middle sister, she went to a public high school.
Oh, so there could be situations where my ex and I have two kids, a 10-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old daughter, and I might want to put the 10-year-old in a private school, but not necessarily the 12-year-old. Or maybe I want to put them both in the private school, and my ex could say yay to the one and nay to the other?
But kids are different.
Really?
Yes.
Have you seen situations where the court has indeed done that? Have you seen situations like that?
Sure.
And what's the court look to? Would it be my burden? Well, I guess it would depend on where the kids went to school in the first place. Let's say they never went to a public school, and now I want to pull one out and put them in a private school. Would I have the burden to justify that with the court?
I don't know if the word is to use the burden, but you certainly have to show to the court why that would be in your child's best interests.
Okay.
Things that are important would be, how is your child not doing as well where she's currently placed?
Like a learning disability
Maybe.
type of thing. Okay.
Does the new school have the capability to better serve your child?
Okay. Academically and perhaps even
Socially.
extracurricularly. I can never say that.
Sure.
Okay.
What about friends? Does she have a lot of friends where she is now?
Okay.
Or would she be going to somewhere where she has more friends? Does she have bullying where she is now? That's a big thing right now with schools.
Right.
Is bullying by peers, or let's see what else.
But my sister's kids go to this private school, and our attorney Iacobucci, our 10-year-old, always wanted to go to the private school with her cousins. How's that for a reason?
Your child's preference? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
That might play a small part.
Small part. Okay. All right. What if the opposite? I just thought of this as you were talking. What if the opposite? What if the kids have always gone to a private school, And now that we're separated, I can't afford to pay for that private school, and I want to put the kid in a public school. Do we have a whole other set of issues, or it's pretty much the same set of factors?
Well, cost is definitely an issue. If you simply cannot afford to keep sending your kid to private school, the court is certainly going to consider that.
They're going to look at that.
Sure.
Now, I guess that's a great point, because we could afford it when we were together living under one household, one roof, combined incomes, etc. But now we're sustaining separate households, and I just can't afford it. So I want to take both my 10-year-old and 12-year-old, take them out of that private school and put them into a public school. So I can ask for that. I can pursue that.
You can request it.
So there's that option. Okay. Well, let's talk about, we have a couple minutes yet, let's talk about the logistics of, let's say, all right, that scenario we just ended with. The kids are 10 and 12. They've always gone to a private school. We separate. We've always lived in Phoenixville School District. My ex moves across the river to Montclair. What's that? Not even a quarter mile away. And she wants to continue the private school. Here we are. We're taping this show end of July 2017. I say no, time out. I can't afford the private school. They need to go to either Springford School District, where she lives, or Phoenixville School District, where I live. What are my options? What should I do?
Where does your girlfriend want them to go in that situation?
She wants them to continue at that private school where they've always been.
You're going to have to petition the court.
I would think she would have the edge, so to speak, or the leverage, or the inside track, whatever the kind of hackneyed saying there, because the kids have always gone to private school.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to go to court to ask the court, hey, I want to disrupt the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If we have any viewers in that situation or a situation similar to that, what should they do? Now they're watching this show at night. What should they do tomorrow morning? Call their attorney quickly.
They should call their attorney quickly and also explain to your attorney, this is something that just happened. I just found this out.
Okay.
Because courts are going, how fast you get before a judge is going to be determined by how long you've waited.
Okay. And if I just discovered it, does that give me a better chance of getting the ear of a judge than, we're taping this show in July. School starts, let's say school starts middle of August, 3 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
That gives me a better chance if I just discovered it than if I knew
in March.
And
I would also, your attorney should label the petition as an emergency petition.
Okay. What if, now is there a little bit of a difference here with logistics and procedures? What if my ex and I don't even have a custody order? It's all been a handshake during this time period that we've been separated. So what do we do? What do I do? Do I need to start a custody case first?
You do. You have to start it, and this is why an attorney is very important, because it would require multiple filings, a petition for custody as well as an emergency petition.
Okay. How do generally courts, before I say that, what if we do have a custody order in place already?
Mm-hmm.
Then you wouldn't have to file that custody complaint, right?
Of course.
What would you file?
The emergency petition and special relief.
And it would almost sound in a request to modify, I guess, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Roughly what kind of timetable are we talking about? Here, we're taping this July 27th. School starts August 15th. What's that, 2-3 weeks from now? Without an emergency petition filed, and if I filed either a custody complaint or we have a custody order and I file a motion to modify custody, and people watching this show are in Berks, Chester, or Montgomery County, generally in those three counties, how long of a time period are we looking at? Putting the emergency aside.
If you're putting emergency aside, before you get in front of a judge, it's probably going to take you a few months.
By a few months, 3 to 6 months?
I would say so.
How about, isn't there something called custody conciliation conferences?
There is.
And that's in front of a master or
A master.
Something. And roughly how long does that take to get in front of?
I would say probably 6 weeks.
So that's about a month and a half-ish. And does that apply to each of the counties, roughly, that time period?
Give or take.
Okay. And then if we can't reach an agreement at that custody conciliator or master,
Listed for trial.
Listed for trial, and that could be roughly another...
A couple months. Every judge is different.
Right, and every county is different.
And every county is different. But I always tell my clients, expect a longer wait. Don't expect it to be a short wait.
Expect a longer wait.
Yes.
Okay, now, you talked a little bit about this with the emergency petitions.
Mm-hmm.
I find this out, or I come to you today, July 27th, and I say, this is what I want to do. I want the child to be enrolled in public school. I can't afford it. What's one of your first questions? How long have I known about this? I mean, I'm gilding Lily here, putting words in your mouth, but
yes,
that's pretty darn important, isn't it?
Yes.
If you file an emergency petition for me, what's the timetable then to get into court? I guess it depends on the emergency, right?
It does. It depends on the emergency.
And it depends on the court.
And if they think you really just found this out.
And you were in court in Dauphin County the other day.
I was.
And over on an emergency. And was that one of the first things the judge asked? Or was interested in? How long's this thing been percolating?
Well, it wasn't something that the judge asked because I put it in my petition.
Oh, okay. So you put it right out there there'd be no cute hiding of issues.
I did because I knew the judge was going to want to know. So I put in my petition when my client found out the emergent conditions that I thought required the emergency petition.
Okay. I've known about this, Melissa, or Attorney Iacobucci, since March. My chances of getting, versus I've known about it for 24 hours. There's a big difference in my chances of getting the ear of an emergency judge.
There is.
Okay. I know back in the dinosaur days, that was one of the first things I looked at. How long has my client known about it, and have they, acceded, or have they consented to this in the past, and now maybe I'm trying to impress my new paramour, or maybe I have second thoughts, or impress my family that I'm the father of the year.
Right.
So I come to Attorney Iacobucci, and you want to look at that.
Right.
I just
want to say one thing. If your petition is not deemed an emergency, it will just go through the regular court system.
Back to that 3-month or 6-week to 3 to 5 months.
And you might not go to conciliation in that point.
I
just want to make that clear.
Good. Okay. You might skip the conciliation to a judge?
You would maybe go to a judge. You might have a conference with the judge beforehand, but you might not have conciliation if the sole issue is school choice.
And it could still take quite a few
It could still take a
weeks
few
or months.
Yes.
All right, so folks, this show's going to air, and Melissa, this show's going to air in probably August of 2017, which is very timely for our viewers who are concerned about school choice issues. And I think the takeaway here, Melissa, should be, folks, please, if you're sitting in any of those issues that we've talked about, sitting on any of those issues we've talked about here tonight, get your attorney on the phone. Don't monkey around with it. Get your attorney on the phone, because you could be, if you delay, you could be hurt strategically, because it could be alleged that you consented to the situation, and you could be hurt timing-wise. Melissa has said that it could take weeks, if not months, to get in front of a judge. So I think that's the two takeaways, Melissa. But thanks for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
Folks, thanks for joining Legal Talk, brought to you by O'Donnell, Weiss & Mattei Law Offices. We're at 41 High Street in Pottstown. We're at 347 Bridge Street in Phoenixville. We're your one law firm for all your legal needs at www.owmlaw.com. Thank you again, and have a great night.